Welcome to the August edition of the Shadowverse Meta Snapshot. 3 weeks have passed since our last Meta Snapshot, and the meta has had a lot of time to shift around. While Last Word Shadow is still reigning as the apex predator that's dominating matchups across the board, the focus and meta shifts of the past 3 weeks have been anchored to the rise of Bayleon Sword, a deck that has gotten extremely popular after successes in both JCG and Rage qualifiers. This development in turn gave rise to control-oriented counter decks, such as Sanctuary Haven and Control Dragon, which then boosted the popularity of combo decks like Machina Portal that countered these slow-paced archetypes. One of the casualties of the recent meta shift is the fall of Evo Rune as an archetype. Although it was not a very strong deck to begin with, and it was already losing popularity when we compiled the previous Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot. The dreaded Combo Forest, once winning games as early as turn 5, has also dropped in rankings, replaced by a newer version of a Self Forest with a more refined game plan. Before we go into the details, remember to like and subscribe to our Tempo Strategy YouTube channel for the latest decks and strategy content. Even though the meta changed a lot since 3 weeks ago, Last Word Shadow is still the most popular and consistent deck in the meta, allowing it to keep its top spot in this month's Meta Snapshot. While Bayleon Sword has proven to be able to stand toe-to-toe with Last Word Shadow, the deck has decent matchups against other recently popular decks. Notably, Amulet Haven has a favorable matchup against Last Word Shadow, but that deck struggles against the rest of the meta. Bayleon Sword, formerly labeled as OTK Sword, has proven itself to be one of the best decks in the format in recent weeks after successes in online tournaments. The deck rises from the top of Tier 2 to the runner-up deck in Tier 1. As mentioned in the intro, much of the shift in the meta can be attributed to the rise of Bayleon Sword, and even though the deck's just slightly unfavored against Last Word Shadow, even that matchup is still close to 50-50. Bayleon Sword also has a positive matchup against some of the more popular decks in the meta, such as Machina Portal and Self Forest. Machina Portal retained its 3rd place in this month's Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot. With its strong 9 PP Belphomet into Absolute Tolerance combo, Machina Portal preys on control decks like Control Dragon and Sanctuary Haven that became more popular in order to target Bayleon Sword. Its slight weakness against other Tier 1 decks holds the deck back from climbing higher up in power levels. For a detailed guide on how to pilot this deck, check out Potwasher's guide in the Shadowverse section of TempoStorm.com. Over the past weeks, a Self Forest has pretty much replaced Combo Forest due to its more proactive and flexible build. Instead of trying to push for critical damage with a big Latica combo, a Self Forest pushes damage early on with efficient Accelerate effects, then bursts down the opponent with an Enchanted Walder and/or strong mid-game followers buffed with Fairy Flowering. While a Self Forest is weaker to Bayleon Sword when compared to Machina Portal, it has better matchups against the wide range of up-and-coming decks in the Tier 2 spectrum, making a Self Forest the more well-rounded deck. Last Word Shadow, with its positive matchup spread, continues to be a good deck for ladder grinding. While the skill floor of the deck is rather low, the ceiling is also very high, making it a somewhat tricky deck to utilize. Bayleon Sword has fast and straightforward games and does well against the upper echelon of the tier list, but it may be subjected to counter decks every once in a while. Machina Portal has a decent matchup spread, and it can be effective in targeting the anti-meta counter decks. It can be quite educational to newer players to learn about the fundamentals of Shadowverse. This cyclical relationship between decks creates a very fluid meta where the popularity of decks affect one another. At the bottom of Tier 2 are decks that have terrible overall matchups and exist solely to counter the rise of Bayleon Sword, which in turn feeds into Machina Portal and Self Forest. Meanwhile, the top decks continue to become more refined. Last Word Shadow players, for example, are still deciding between Goldmine Necromancer and Milteo, and Self Forest has recently included more parts of the Latica combo. The rise and fall in deck popularity creates a meta where the player who's best able to read the meta succeeds. The mini expansion is due towards the end of the month. Blood decks, currently stranded in the silent halls of Tier 4, only to be utilized when players have to compete their dailies, can certainly use some attention. Yet the design of mono can make related archetypes difficult to balance. Amulet Haven, after the crippling Jadalent nerfs from last month, can also get a slight boost to help put the deck back onto the radar. radar. With only 2 months left to this year's Shadowverse Open Circuit, the competitive scene of Shadowverse is certainly heating up. It is not too late to start now, as the winner of September's Shadowverse Open gets automatically qualified for the Contenders Cup, so you can potentially steal that much-desired Contenders Cup spot from one of these players. To keep an eye on the ever-changing meta, remember to check out our website regularly for the latest Shadowverse content, featuring guides from top competitors like Noir, Dulan, and Potwasher. We will see you again next month.